Well, we'll start, if we can, if you could tell us your name and your date of birth.
I'm Irene Hore, Hore, and my birth date is the 27th of May, 1925.
And Irene, what was your maiden name?
Beavis, Beabis.
Can you tell us where you were born and growing up?
Yes, I was born in Perth in the Women's Hospital, and at the time my father was working on the dam that supplied the water to Kalgoorlie.
Oh.
That when it was, I can't remember the name of the dam, but that's where we worked. And we moved when I was 2. We went over, my grandparents bought a winery in Port Augusta, of all places. That was a long time ago, and they thought they would get rain and everything there, but they grew sultana grapes, and they were put on big racks, and you had to turn them every day to dry them. We were there for 2 years. In 1929, my father went down to Adelaide and came home with a 1929 A model Ford. Oh, it was something, you know.
Yeah.
And he packed us all up to go to Western Australia. Now, it was only a 2-wheel track.
Yeah.
And my brother was 4, I was 4, my brother was 6. And I had an older sister of 8, and we stopped up at Ceduna, it was the last spot, and from then on my father used to stop at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he would set rabbit traps, and so we ate rabbits, and I can remember eating a snake that got caught in it, and we got to Grass Patch, which is where the road sort of meets the Western Australian roads.
Yep.
And my auntie, my mother's sister, they lived at Grass Patch, and I don't know what they did, but I can remember auntie making bread out of yeast that she made from potato peels.
Oh.
And that has stayed with me all my life, that you can always make something out of something.
Out of nothing. Yeah, that's amazing.
I don't know how. I don't know how long we were there. We must have been another couple of years. And my next memory really is living in Perth. My parents bought a news agency on the quarter of South Perth, and it's still there.
Really?
It's still there.
What's the address? What was the address of the...
It was in, I think it was Stirling Street in South Perth.
Oh, nice.
And number 9, I think. And they tell me that I had a pet cat, and it got run over by a tram, and I dragged it home without its head.
Did you live at that location as well? Did you live at the news agency? Was there a house there? Yeah.
Yes. I can remember. I've been always terrified of trams.
Yeah.
My mother used to say, "You've got to make your bed before you go to school or anything, or you might get run over by a tram." I had no idea what a tram was. But then we went to Perth, and I had a ride in a tram. I was told I was put on the tram screaming and yelling and everything else because
Maybe you hadn't made your bed.
I thought it was going to eat me. We were there for 2 years, I think, and then we moved down to Bridgetown.
So,
Bridgetown is very much like here. It's forestry and very, very hilly. And they bought a milk bar, and it had tables, you know, for feeding and everything. And when I was on Stirling Street, I think it was, and then we moved down to Hampton Street, more to the middle of the town. And my dad got very, very sick, and he couldn't take the cold winters.
oh,
And so he shifted back up to Kalgoorlie. And because the three children, my sister, brother and I, were going to school, and my father, all the work he could do was getting sandalwood. And of course he's an old prospector.
Yep.
That's in your blood, you
Yeah.
don't get out of that.
yeah.
So my mother decided to stay in Bridgetown so that we could go to school. And we did that. And
So she ran the milk bar on her own then.
yes, and
How old were you at this point in time?
well, that was all through my school years. And it was at the end of the Depression,
Yep.
and it was hard. Bridgetown at that time was all apple orchards. Absolutely fantastic, beautiful apples. And my mother used to, the farming ladies would come with bread, with butter and eggs and anything they could produce. And my mother used to make, she was a fantastic cook. She could make anything out of anything. And we were the first one in the area to ever have a commercial refrigerator.
Oh,
And we used to make ice blocks,
yep.
you know, with flavoured ice, flavoured water was a halfpenny. And I can remember the fruit salad ones with cream on top. They were threepence. And that was
They were delicious though, with real fruit.
yes.
Yeah.
And we worked there during the packing time. It was very hard. My mother used to feed 24 men, 3 meals a day.
Oh,
Breakfast would be porridge, eggs and toast. And our job was, my brother and I, our job was to get up and look after the toast. Well, 6 o'clock in the morning, quite often we burnt it because we went to sleep in front of the fire.
no.
Yes,
So you always had jobs before and after school?
always.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The meals, the lunch, the midday meal was a big meal, and night time it was a big meal, and it was 1 and 6pence each, you know,
For the 3 meals?
for 24 men. And she did that all over the packing season. When the apples came in, it was always a great competition to get the apples out early. They had to have a certain sugar content in them before they could be set. And of course most of them, West Farmers had a big packing shed, and most of them went overseas, you know, and it was always if you could get the first shipment out, you know. So of course we used to hope for sunshine to ripen the apples.
Would they be sweeter or would they lose their sugar content the longer they were on the train? Or is that why they wanted them out first? Or
No,
it was just a competition
It was
amongst
just
themselves?
a competition. You couldn't pack them until they had that certain
Yeah, yeah.
amount. Prior to that, they just bruised, you know. But they were all wrapped and everything.
Yeah, I remember that now you say that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So special apples.
that was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard on my mum and it was hard on us really, because we'd have to get up and help in the morning. School time, the school was round the corner.
Yep.
And we could come home and help at lunchtime, serve the meals.
Yeah.
And then we'd go back to school for the afternoon, you know.
And it's just what you did to make things work. Yeah. Did you see much of your dad during that time?
No, my dad, he was so ill. He was sent to Kalgoorlie. He went to Kalgoorlie. He would come home every year for Christmas.
Yeah.
And that was the only time
Yeah.
we had it. There was, my mother got up one morning and found this teenage lady in her doorway with a little new baby. Her name was Nellie, and Nellie came to live with us then.
With the baby.
Yeah. The baby was taken from her,
Oh, well.
but she always stayed with us. But in later life, she got with a baby again.
Yeah.
Her name was Veronica.
Oh. And so did you know Nellie before that, or she just turned up?
We just found her there, and she lived with us forever. And she was supposed to look after not the shop, the house part.
Yep.
And of course that was us children.
Yeah.
We gave her, on hindsight, we gave her an awful time.
Well, she probably wasn't that much older. She probably thought she was your friend as well.
That's right.
That's really generous of your family to do that.
Well, Mum just took her in, you know. And
She must have had a lovely heart.
and then she sort of looked after us. She did all the washing and threw us in the bath. The bath was nearly always cold water.
Yeah.
And I was lucky I was the youngest, so I got in first.
Yeah.
So, but it had a little heater thing there, but I don't think it worked too much.
In a lot of families, it goes from the oldest down to the youngest, so you're a bit lucky in your family. So with you said that you had electric cooling. How did your mum do all the cooking?
We had an enormous great stove. On hindsight, I think it was 2 stoves.
Yeah.
But Dad made this big wire thing that we used to put the bread in to toast in the morning. And my mother had she was famous for her pies, cooking. She had a little ringer. And at night time, she always made the pastry, and one of us would have to use the ringer while the other carried the pastry up on top of the...
Like making pasta.
And it had to be done, we had to do that 7 times. So, but her puff pastry just went like...
Did it?
Yeah. She used to make curly cone things and...
It sounds like you all worked really hard to make the family make ends.
Yes.
Yeah.
She tried hard. I can remember the school sports were on one year, and Mum was going to come to them. It was because she couldn't come to anything. I mean, she got us into guides and scouts and brownies, and she did everything she could, but she was always too busy to...
Yeah.
And she decided that she would come. She promised us. And she came and she had one of those fox little things around her neck with it. And she had lipstick on.
Oh.
And we were absolutely horrified. My brother and I always reckoned that she stopped because we were horrified we didn't win the race.
Oh. Never seen her dressed up before. Oh, that's terrible.
But she did her best.
Poor thing. What was her name?
Her name was Ellen.
Ellen. And your dad's name was?
Robert.
Robert.
Yeah, Robert John.
That's a good name.
And it went right down from the families. Ellen has come right down back as far as we can remember.
Yeah.
Irene Ellen.
Yeah.
My daughters, Barbara Ellen, her daughters, Ida Ellen, her daughters, Dorothy Ellen.
Oh, it's nice, isn't it? Family
It's
tradition.
good, yeah. But the last one hasn't. She's only got 2 little boys and she's not having a little girl.
It's enough. Two's enough.
But
So all those years you grew up in that town, what happened?
we, well, the war came and all the young fellows that left the district. My mother still had the shop because she could not get any supplies. I used to come from Perth to Bridgetown on the train, and my brother was 14, I was 12, and we had a blue Dodge utility, and my mother decided that she would drive it. She'd never driven before. She backed out, got stuck in the gutter, and there it stopped for a week. And the police came and shifted it, put it back. And my brother took it out one day. So then between my brother and I, we did the deliveries, and we would go up and meet the train and get the things off there. So if it was heavy, I drove at 12 with a big cushion behind me. But my brother was 14 at the time.
You just did what you had to do, really, didn't you? I don't think I think that happened in those times. I mean, you just did what you had to do to make things work, didn't you?
Well, the police had a blind eye.
Yeah.
We sort of the youngest of the policemen was a horseman, you know, and he used to be on the horse all the time. He always was. We were permitted to do that, but we weren't allowed to do it any other time.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed to take it down the river. So from Blackwood River was about half a mile away, and of course there was swimming and a lot of fun on the river. But we were never ever allowed to see. We used to go and catch marron. It's a crayfish and jewels.
Yep.
And one time we went, oh, this is awful.
Oh, this is one of those times we've got to edit. Yeah.
we forgot the bait, and we just thought, well, there's a chook yard over there. And we went over and snooked a rooster.
Oh no.
We didn't know it was a prize rooster. But I tell you, it was good bait. We did well that time. But of course we got caught because there was feathers everywhere, and we had to go every weekend for 6 weekends and clean out the chook.
Oh no.
That was our punishment.
You wouldn't do that to it.
We had wonderful times on the river. We got an old piece of corrugated iron and we rolled it up and put a kerosene tin in each end, and we would go up the river And we used to steal peaches. Peaches and cherries.
Oh.
And we got away with it for quite a long time until the person who property was sold, and he had a spyglass and he caught us. We had, I think, only 4 weeks punishment.
Your weekends were busy for a long time.
I tell you, we had fantastic.
You had a lovely upbringing and a lovely childhood. The war, though, it must have changed, particularly with the picking and stuff like that. There wouldn't have been any young blokes to pick the apples anymore. What happened?
Well, of course, the market was ruined. They couldn't send the apples to England or anything, and West Farmers closed down. And I was sent to Perth. Western Australia was, I think it was in more danger because they thought the Japanese would land on the west coast because it wasn't populated, and it was pretty strict. And when I was 16, I was sent to Perth. I worked at night shift in the post office in the telephone exchange, and that was why I was chosen to go to Perth.
Yeah, Tom.
And they put me in the taxation office, and all the checks that came in and all the checks that went out, I was on one of the 2 big machines that worked that.
Oh,
And that was...
so it would have been quite a big deal for you to be sent to Perth. Did you? Where did you live? Where did you go to?
Oh, they put us in the YAL. Yeah, and it was one of these beautiful big old houses that had been built during the gold rush.
Yep.
There was a big staircase on it, you know, like Tara. Yeah, very grand. It was beautiful. And closing time was 9 o'clock at night. We all had to be, and they were quite strict with us. But we had one lady. The rooms were made into cubicles, and we all slept out on the veranda. And one lady that was in the corner had a very big toe, and she had a rope on it, and we would pull on it, and she'd sneak downstairs. He didn't let us in.
Yeah, it was.
Of course, Perth and Australia at the time was full of Americans.
Yeah.
There was a big Catalina station on the Swan River, and they climbed in, and they took over the university buildings to live in. And we used to have to, it was compulsory for everyone to have a voluntary job.
As well.
Yeah. And mine was to go to the hospital where all the soldiers and everything go. And of course there was a lot of Americans coming, you know, injured and everything. And I'm walking down the passageway one night, and this big general, I don't know what he was, but he had a lot of medals and things. And he said to me, do you know Perth? And I said, yes. Do you know all the streets? And I said, yes. He said, at night time? And I said, yes. And he said, good, I want you. He said, can you drive? And I said, yes. So he said, right, I want you. And he went and he put me in an ambulance. And the lights were only little slits, you know. And so I drove an ambulance
At night?
in Perth.
Wow.
And I always had this, I wasn't a medical person, we always had someone with us, but the majority of the people that we picked up were intoxicated. But I was never in that ambulance alone. Then Perth, because it only had a very small airport in it, they built a great big one out at Boulder near Kalgoorlie. And because my parents, Mum had closed the shop down because she couldn't get provisions or anything, and she'd gone up to Kalgoorlie to Dad. And because I lived up there, they sent me up there to train the girls, the Air Force girls, in using the television, the telephone at least, I'm sorry. And I tell you, one civilian girl amongst all those uniforms was not popular. It didn't like me. At all, so
So what happened? What did your brother? Because you had another sister and a brother. What did they do? If you once you
my sister got married, and she ran a store over the other side of the road from my mother's shop, McKay's, and she was in charge of all the drapery part of that.
okay?
And my brother had gone up to Dad and lived up with him, got the gold prospers and bugging him. And then, you see, I was sent to Perth, so Mum was just left there, so she went up to Kalgoorlie.
So she closed the store,
Yes, she couldn't get any provisions, she couldn't get them.
and there would have been there wouldn't have been the customers either. I mean, everybody
Well,
who could was more.
the apples and people used to bring truckloads of apples up to Perth and sell them in the streets.
Yeah.
You know. But of course that was hard too because petrol was hard to get.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember the old big boiler things on the back of the trucks, you know. They did everything they
Could to make to keep because the trees would have the fruit would have just rotted away. Yeah.
Yes.
Sad. Yeah.
Yes. We used to, as kids, because we had the shop, we had to take them in turns to mind the shop over a weekend. And we used to think, why do people come all the way from Bunbury and Busselton, 20 and 30, 40 miles away, just to have a look at these beautiful pink trees with the apple and the blue lesion old underneath. I'd give anything to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That was always one memory, just the trees. And going back and finding no trees.
Oh, heartbreaking. Yeah.
They say you should never go back, but
So, how was life in So you went from Perth to
Kalgoorlie.
and how was life in Kalgoorlie?
I wasn't there very long before I got married. I met August in the army. He was put on the Queen Elizabeth, and they got nearly to the Middle East when Japan came into the war, and they just turned the ship around, and they dumped the 5th and 6th Division in Western Australia because they thought that was where the Japanese were going to land. And he was a driver mechanic of the trucks, and they used to, if a spotter plane came over, Japanese, they used to have to change all the munition dumps that they had all the way up there, and that was his job. So,
How did you meet him?
well, my friend, I promised my mother that I would never go out with an American sailor.
Good advice.
So my friend had mixed up her dates and she had an Aussie coming and an American, and she just decided that night that she would have the American and leave the Aussie. And it turned out to be this fellow that when I used to play music for the dancing at the YL, and this fellow used to lean over the top of the piano and listen. It turned out to be him. That was it.
We're just... Talking about Orb, how you met Orb, and you met him
Yeah.
that night.
Yes, and he walked me home back, and it was late, and he pulled the string off. It was the most beautiful house. It was glorious. Had a big conservatory in the bottom of it, and that was, we used to sneak in through there, and we got away with that because the army girls were billeted there, and we just sort of walked through them and sort of snuck in that way.
They never dobbed you in or anything?
But I'm quite sure the matron who was in charge of us all, I'm quite sure she knew what was going on.
She probably allowed a little bit of leeway. I mean, for the times it was, you know, you probably didn't get much spare time if you were working full-time and volunteering as well. She probably just thought, oh, she's a good girl. She'll be all right.
We filled sandbags and put them in all the doorways and everything of all the houses. That was another thing that we did. Yeah, it was full life.
Yeah. So he walked you home, and then what happened?
Then he wrote to me the time, and each time he got leave, we would go to the pictures. And that's all I'm going to tell you.
So he was based over there for quite some time.
Yes, and then he was sent, when Japan came into the war, he was sent over to the east.
And
And
what did you think about him living on the other side of the country?
well, my mother was horrified. He was Victorian, and to us, we were like different countries, you know.
Still is a bit.
My ambition to go when I was started work was to earn £50 and catch the train, go to Sydney, have a look at the Harbour Bridge, and come home again. That was
your greatest ambition.
to see the Sydney Harbour Bridge.
Yeah.
That was all I wanted to do. Yes. And then all got leave before he was sent up to the islands, and I went over there for a fortnight and met all his family. I tell you, I thought, gee, you can breathe well.
Where did you go to meet all the family?
Yeah, in Kahuna, that's up on the Murray.
Yep.
Yes, and that's the farmers at Horfield. It's named after the family. Apparently 4 families went originally, and they got a mile square properties in the plain country, and then of course the irrigation came and they lived closer to the river, so that was a nice sight too.
Yeah.
And I looked at, and it was so flat, you know, because it's all irrigation up there. And I thought, at any rate, he was dragged out of the army because he wasn't well when he got up to Queensland, and he worked in the hospitals for quite a while there, and then they sent him back because his father had bought another property, the purebred jerseys and one thing and another, and his mother was very, very sick. She died 2 months after we got married, so, you know, and so he was dragged out of the army and put back on the farm. And unknown to me, he had written to my father asking for permission to marry me before he even asked me.
So, gentlemen.
And my father said on the condition that the war is over for
Okay.
4 years, so we got married just before the end of the war. So then I came over on the train. Well, that was a bit of my schoolgirl ambition to do that. So, yeah.
So were your parents able to come to the wedding? Were you married over in
We were
Victoria?
married in Kalgoorlie.
Oh, you
in
were?
the same,
Oh, nice.
same church as my mother and father were married. Yeah, yes. And we went to my father was very, he knew a lot of people, and they rolled out the red carpet in the town hall for us to have our wedding breakfast.
Oh, beautiful.
And it was lovely.
So was his own. So was his family able to come to the wedding then, or were they?
His mother could fly over. His father was to. His mother came with him.
Yeah.
Go across on the train.
Yeah.
And his father was to fly over, and he got to the airport and they kicked him off the plane because some big general or something, somebody else wanted it. So he never got there.
Oh, it's
But we sort of had a mock wedding when we got
yeah.
back up
For
to
his
the
family,
Victoria's
yeah.
family.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so you settled back into Kahuna.
Into Kahuna, in this flat country.
Yeah.
And there was no trees. You know, now you go there and all the farms have got trees up the channels. But it was only these long channels and no trees. And 10 miles away was a heap of big granite rocks.
Yep.
And I used to look at them. There was a few trees there. And so every Sunday we had a picnic there just to get off this flat country.
Needed some hills, yeah.
And then we came down. There was some Western Australian people had the commercial bank in Kahuna, and they were transferred to Warragul.
Yeah.
And we came down to a visit to them. Oh, I was lost. This was my country. So we went back and all came down and bought a property and we moved down here. So, but in the meantime, we'd had 2 children, 2 daughters. So, yeah, we did all right up there. So, it was so flat. But now it's beautiful. I go up there and I think it's wonderful because there's trees and everything, you know.
So the farm that you left in Kahuna, that was his family farm?
Yes, Bob's father, his mother died, and his mother died just before Barbara was born. We'd been married, must have been a couple of years.
Yeah.
I nursed her just about all the time. She was a very bad diabetic and had heart conditions. And they sent her to Melbourne, and from there she was sent to Dandenong Hospital, and Pop went to bring her home, and by the time she was dismissed from the hospital, it was too late for him to drive up to Kahuna, so he went to a brother's place, and she died that night, so she never really got home. You know, so, and that was 2 months before Barbara was born. And Barbara, I didn't know very much about death and one thing's another, and it really hit me badly because she had lived with me, sort of.
And you cared for her and nursed her?
Yeah, and Barbara turned and it was terrible. She was fighting us one day, having there was the struggles. Yeah. And then we moved down to this beautiful country,
Yeah.
God's own country.
So what's the property called and where is it that you bought here? Is that a decision that you made together or did you all decide to?
No, one of Orb's many cousins, I suppose, he seemed to have millions of them, and came down here, and he bought a place at Bourne.
Yep.
And Pop and Bob came down here, and they came home and they said they had a property here.
Yep.
So we came down and we bought the little property at Nayook. And that is a beautiful little spot. It's a valley in the hills, you know. They get terribly wind and stuff up the Neerim Junction, but we never got it down there, you know. But we used to get the frosts.
And was the farm established? Was there a homestead there when you moved?
There was an old house. It was built after the 1926 fires.
Yep.
And it was all built with apparently the people that built it had a sawmill, and all the timber in it is fantastic. There's no doubt about that. But every room had a different window in it. Some had sashes that came up, some had opened, you know, and it was all lined with second-hand stuff.
Yep.
And one room had paper on it, and it was all coming off, and we pulled it off, and it had old plaster sheet with holes in it, and the bats used to get it.
So what year would this have been? Because if it was built in 1926, it wouldn't have been incredibly old, I suppose.
No, but you see, it was built with second-hand materials after, you know, so...
Yeah. And probably, so the material was probably 100 years old.
The floorboards were terrible, and...
So what did you do about that?
Yeah. Well, we lived in it. Yeah, we lived in it for 25 years. We
Patched it up?
Patched it up and did it up and painted it. Got it to live. We'll put a new kitchen in it. So, yeah.
That's the main thing if you've got a decent kitchen, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And so you had 2 children when you...
Yes, and Dorothy was born here in Warrigal.
Yep.
Because I was so bad with Barbara. Dorothy was a welcome baby, but I was so in and out of hospital all the time I was carrying her.
Yeah.
I was so sure I was having my son at last. But she was born without a spout, so it was a girl.
So when you moved to New York, what was the... how many people were there when you moved, and what did they do to welcome you to the town and to the district?
Nayook was a big mill town. It had a huge mill, timber mill there, and it was the end of the railway line.
Yep.
And it had a big turntable on it where they turned the engines. And then, of course, they built the bridges, and it went finally down to New G. It carted timber, and every Wednesday, it was market day in Warrigal. Was it Wednesday or Thursday? Thursday, that's right. And it was 5 shillings to go on market day. They would have one special train that would come to New G, and people would go in there and shop in Warrigal. You know, the men would have the sugar bag, you know, with a bit of rope on their back, and the women would have
their baskets.
And if we were able to buy bananas, they'd bribe the children. If you're good, we'll bring you home bananas.
Apart from that, if you didn't do your shopping at the market day in Warrigal, you would have shopped at Neerim Junction.
Yes, and the people there were wonderful.
Yeah.
Tea stalls were their name.
Yep.
And when we went onto the property, after the shock of all this level irrigation ground, the paddocks had nearly all had potatoes in it. And of course, in those days, they just heaped the potatoes up and dug them out of the floor.
Yep.
And this was it. It was all rough. And after having the irrigation land, of course, it was a shock. It was straight out to do it. And we bought some purebred jerseys with us, and there was 19 cows on the property that were terrible. But we had to milk them just the same. At the time we were doing cream and sending it, there was a factory in Neerim South.
Yep.
And it went there, and finally we got onto the whole milk, so, and better cows. The cow shed was good, it was good, but it was, you had to come in and put the cow in back around to get it back around, so. But that
And
was,
you were involved in the milking as well, you used to.
the cows were mine.
Oh,
I milked the cows,
that was you.
or would get them up.
Yep.
And he worked in the paddock, did all the fencing and everything. And he would bring them up at 4 o'clock, and then I would milk them. And the children come home from school, and he'd look after them. And then after milking, I'd feed the calves.
Yep.
And then he would come and do all the cleaning up and
Okay.
everything. So.
And is that something you loved? You
Yes.
grew to love?
Yes. From a person who thought, I can remember his mother on the train saying, "Oh, look at that lovely little Guernsey." And
Yeah.
I thought she was talking about a woolen jumper. I had no idea of jerseys and Guernseys, and
No.
they were only black and white cows or brown ones. I had no idea of what a cow was, but no, the cows were mine.
That's good. I remember my grandmother, Jane McGilroy, who you would have known, she loved her cows.
Yes.
And loved the calves.
Yes.
You know, it just had a real thing for, just a real thing for them.
Yes.
So you had the same kind of heart for them. Yeah.
Yes. And we never ever said, this is your job, that's my job. We just sort of fitted in.
Shared the load.
Yeah. And
It was a great partnership then.
I liked the outside work better than the
Yes.
inside work.
Yeah.
How big was the farm, Irene? How big was the farm?
108 and 3/4 acres.
How much of that was cleared?
Well, the railway line went through the middle of it, right through the middle of it, and the back, I suppose, perhaps 10 acres were bush, trees, beautiful, 5 of the most beautiful big gum trees that you ever saw. And every winter the meal would come and want to buy them, and we all would never sell them because in the winter time you dried off the majority of the cattle and you put them in there.
Okay.
And if it snowed or anything, they were protected.
They had shelter, yeah.
They were warm because the timber and the creek was there. We were the first one in the district to ever have a dam put in, and all applied to the Water Commission for permission, and they laughed at him. Why on earth, with your rainfall, do you need a dam? But the idea of the dam was the sides were steep and they were covered with blackberries and bracken, and all thought if he put the dam in, he'd have an entrance then to the back paddocks. And so the dam wall became like the bridge.
The track, yeah.
Yeah, to get to the...
So that was smart there.
All the back paddocks were bush.
Yeah.
So we cleared it,
They cleared it over time.
except these beautiful big gum trees. He would get up and get the cows up while I sort of
Got things
roused the kids.
Yep.
And then he would take over and cut their lunches, school lunches, and get them home.
So spuds.
Spuds.
Tell us about the spuds.
I have experience with spuds.
Not as much fun as apples, not as pretty as apples, are they? So you did grow some spuds.
Under the trees were these wooden boxes, under the big row of pine trees. And then it was funny little green things. They were hard or green, we didn't know what they were. And we had Italian neighbours. Cardamones were their name. They were the most fantastic people to us because we were new in all this. And he said to us, "You're going to plant your potatoes." And Orb said, "Oh, I don't know anything potatoes. I don't know anything about that, no." And he said, "Well, what are you going to do with those under the trees?" So we discovered that these little hard green things were seed potatoes. And he came with beautiful big horses and he ploughed the paddock for us.
Oh.
And he showed all how to put them in it. He had a little machine and you drop them in, you know.
Yeah.
And so we grew potatoes. And I got quite good at digging them out because I dragging the bars. And in those days, a truck went up the road every year and every day, or every often, and picked up the potatoes, the bags if you left them on the side of the road. It was good. We found out how to size your hat and everything. And the small potatoes we fed to the cows, and you had to follow the cows around with two boards, and if one got stuck in the throat, you had to... But it was survival. It was survival. And then we had this fantastic crop. Oh, grew absolutely beautiful. And Mr. Cardamone came down and told us there'd be nothing underneath because a disease had gone through the country and all the potatoes underneath had rotted. And so we never grew potatoes.
No, that was the end of your potato story.
It was the end. But,
so how many cows did you have in the end? What you were?
well, we finished up with we finished up with a complete herd, 90 milking cows, and we raised all our own calves and everything. So we had our own big bulls and one thing and another. So
A lot to be proud of.
yes. Yes, but it got to the stage where Hob had reached where all his work was sort of finished, and he got to the stage of he was just maintaining it, and he got bored, and so he said it's time to go.
So you sold the farm?
And we came and we bought a little railway house here in Neerim South. And we put a great big garage on it.
Yep.
Did all sorts of things with it, so yeah.
And now you love your garden still.
Oh yes.
And what sort of what did you and all do to amuse yourself when you're not milking cows all the time?
Well,
So your children, I assume your children have grown up at this point in time. They've left as well.
well, no, they're only little. After the war, they asked, through the RSL, they asked you if you would give the city children that the fathers had been killed and a holiday on the farm. So I started on that scheme. We used to get little girls, and we started off with one, and then we sort of got two. And then the final year, they had a third child, and she was, what do they call them now? They were Mongolian at that time, you know, they was
Down.
That's right, thank you. And I couldn't handle it. I knew nothing about it. And so I said to them, no, I'm sorry, I can't have the third child. And they said, well, the two bigger ones would look after her. But to me, it was too much of a responsibility. And I said, you'll have to send them back to Melbourne. And they said, oh, their parents have gone over and sees on a holiday. And I thought, so I dropped out of that scheme. And then they asked me if I'd have foster children. And so I started off with one little toddler, then I ended up with two boys, and one of them is still with me.
Oh, really?
He couldn't be a better son to me. He's just wonderful. But I had quite a few different boys that were only there for a month.
Yeah.
And we went down to Melbourne to collect another one, and they realised that the ages were getting different. You know, I said 2 years younger than my youngest daughter.
Yeah.
And it got to 4 years, so they gave me the choice of two boys. And they were brothers. What could you do? So I had them they were to be with me for a year, and I've still got them.
And how old were they when they came to your home?
2 and 4.
And they're grown up now, they're adults, they're...
Yes. Peter's an old retired pensioner. I've got all my children are old retired pensioners.
You kind of took over your mum's legacy in a way by her taking in that lady that had a baby, but all those years ago.
Yes.
And you're doing kind of in your mum's name, I guess, you know, in a way. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Nellie was wonderful to us.
Yeah.
She knitted all our jumpers.
But you did.
She bought us all a bike.
Your mum did a lot for her too. She was homeless with a child. It would have been a pretty terrifying thing for her.
But but she did catch up with her daughter.
Yeah.
And afterwards, but you could tell what family that child was from by the look of her. She took after her father. Really. But
so, going back to New York, your children went to school at New York?
Yes, they went. And then Barbara was the first year she left for the elementary school started at Neerim South.
Yeah.
So she always reckoned that school was built for her.
Yeah.
And then Dorothy started the first year the high school started. So they claimed they had a school each book.
Yeah, that's great, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, it probably was, really.
Yes.
For all the
went
children.
to Teachers College,
Yeah.
Frankston. Dorothy ended up at the Austin Hospital.
Yes.
So Barbara always stayed home. She never wanted to leave the farm. And so that's where my 3 girls ended up.
Nice.
The 2 boys have gone very well. The eldest one lives up in Toowoomba. He's a master at a plasterer. And Tyler, he went up there and got a job tiling and discovered why should he be out in the sunshine instead of underneath. So he took up the plastering, and he's got his master's degree. He can take on apprentices and things. So.
And did you end up adopting these boys, or did they?
No.
They were always your foster children.
They were always fostered. And when Peter was 14, his father wanted him. His father had married again and had a young family, and they were on a farm. down Leeward way, and he wanted Peter. And I said I didn't think it was fair to separate the boys because that's how I got the two of them. And so he didn't want Eric at all. And Peter was always a sickly boy. He's 80% deaf. And they weren't aware of it when I fostered them. But yeah, he was never a healthy child. Well, if they'd wanted Eric, he would have been the one to work because he was always out, you know.
Was Peter the older one? That's why they wouldn't the older one.
And so they didn't want the two of them, so that's how I kept them.
So you said all or nothing.
Well,
your mama bear came out and said, "No, I'm holding these a bit closer." Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got them to stick them together.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
you know, they were more
But
or
they were
less.
completely opposite kids.
Yeah.
Completely. Eric had blonde curly hair like his father, and Peter was small like his mother and dark. You know, they didn't even look like brothers.
No.
They were. Yeah.
And so they didn't live on the farm. They came to you when you were living in the town.
No, they were on the farm.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. That's where the kids could have it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah. And of course, we were the only ones that had a flat paddock, so all the children, boys,
Yeah.
from this mill would come and do us in the afternoon, and they had a ball of the time. They, would play football and one thing and other in the flat paddock, and then when they just thought it was wonderful to feed the calves and everything. You know.
What was the mill called? Whose mill was that? Do you remember the name of the mill?
The mill.
Yeah, the mill.
The mill?
Yeah.
Oh, it was just an ale.
No, yeah.
As far as I
I think I've got a funnel that's
Yeah, but no, it was, and of course, because the train came through the middle of the farm, we'd have to take the cows so far and get them over there, because the minute you let them go, they'd just separate up and down the line.
Yeah.
So we had to make sure that they...
Yeah, what a nuisance, that going through the farm.
Yes, it wasn't through the middle of the house.
No.
It was through the middle of the farm. So.
Were you involved with the school, with the committees and the...
Oh gosh, yes, she joined everything.
Yeah.
You joined everything, yes. Yeah. We didn't have a lot to do with Neerim South.
No.
But, when they were doing the swimming pools and the schools and everything, when the children were older, yeah, that's when we got more involved with
What was happening here, but
yes.
you looked after your own little community out there,
yes.
Yeah, with the hall, there was a hall and
yes.
the school and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, what made heaps to do.
They gave me a few years ago, I was citizen of, the ones that they give the citizen, and I didn't really want that because they said, I worked with the tennis and football and cricket and schools and everything, but I didn't do that for the sake of I didn't ever think that I was doing it for the sake of the town. I was doing it for my kids, children.
Yep.
Yes, so...
But you, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it worked out.
I mean, everybody gains, don't they? The town,
Yes.
the community, and your children get to have a
Yes.
wonderful childhood.
Everybody worked, and everybody, like the hospital, when they did that, every farmer, I think, raised a calf every year. And, when it was 12 months old, they trucked it off and sold it, and it all went to the hospital.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, it was good life.
Yeah, and you felt part of the growth and the achievements of the towns when when you contribute like that. don't you?
Yes, yeah, I guess so. But you just sort. I just felt that I was cheating a little bit, accepting that, because at the time I didn't even think I was improving the town, or getting the swimming pool wasn't for everybody; it was for my kids. You get what I mean?
Yeah, I do. But that's okay. It's selfish for everybody.
Yes. So
What do you see as being the biggest changes? Because you've been here. What year did you come to the district?
what? 1946.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there would have been some changes in that time.
Changes, yes.
What do you see as being the biggest?
Well, we had the train coming every 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And that was always a great thing.
Yep.
The schools and everything. Nayook School was fantastic.
Yeah.
But it was a big school for, around there was Neerim South and then there was Nayook. I mean, there was Neerim and Neerim East, Neerim North all had their own little schools, but Nayook was the biggest one. And of course we had the train.
Yeah.
It was a great loss to everybody when they stopped the train and pulled up the line.
Yeah.
Because the bridges burned, you see. See, the first bridge accidentally got caught on fire, and then the truckies moved in to shift the potatoes and the timber and everything, and of course they didn't want the bridges rebuilt.
So maybe not quite as accidental.
It was never proved. It was a big bridge and couldn't be fixed. So, but Nuji's got that lovely bridge now.
Yeah.
Tonight, made.
It is beautiful. Yeah.
Yes, that's good. So,
And so you were honoured by the community for your achievements with the community, what you've done for the community. What do you see as being your biggest achievement in all your life? What do you see as being your thing that you're most proud of?
my kids, my 3 girls, and the platoon boys, especially Peter, who had such a thing to overcome. He was deaf. I took him down to Melbourne. They gave him hearing aids. Imagine a boy wearing big hearing aids to school. They used to break them and pull them off, and he was only little. He was never a big boy, and he had a battle.
Okay.
And with school, yes, I was called in one time, and the teacher was complaining. I said, I wrote to you, I told you about his hearing, and that he was a shy little boy, sitting in the front row, and he would lip read. Oh, he was fantastic at it, about it. He could read somebody talking. He was stuff up the street. And, but he was bullied, and so I went in to see him. I said to the headmaster that I'm trying to convince Peter he's no different with hearing aids than a boy with glasses. And he said, you must realise he looks a bit stupid in his hearing aids. I tell you, all was outside and he heard me yelling. Oh, did I? I really lost my temper with that teacher.
Justifiably, yeah.
I said, what hope has that boy got?
Fine.
When the teachers are like that. But he grew up and he got a man and he's got a son and he's very proud of his achievements. Yeah.
And you're proud of them,
He tells me the chook shares are waiting for me for the road.
Because you're so good at cleaning them out.
Yes, when I retire, I'll go up.
When you're retired. When's that next year?
When I get old.
I love it.
So what do you find? What do you find pleasure in doing these days? I mean, apart from your garden, you still love pottering around.
I like food relief. I worked in that for 17 years. I only gave that up this year. That's really a thing that is good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
That would have been.
The people here are fantastic. You know, I just feel I'm a friend of everybody.
Yeah.
You know, and now I go to Warragul and I've been given a walker. And I have discovered that walker stops the traffic on the street. It opens the doors.
A lot of power in that walker.
I'm afraid it's the only time I use it.
It must have been different when you moved from York to Neerim South. How did you manage that? Did you find it difficult, or?
I thought it was absolutely the worst thing that we ever did at the time. We came in here. I was still getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and had nothing to do all day. And then the hospital was across the road, practically. And one weekend, Orb he got the job of doing maintenance work over there. And one weekend, one lady was on holidays and another one broke her arm. And the matron said to Orb, could Irene come over and help a day? And it was on a Friday, and I went over there, and then they gave me the job of serving the meals and doing the dusting and things on that day. And that night, when I knocked off, they paid me 17 shillings and sixpence. And I've still got that check. I've always intended to frame it, but that was my money. On the farm, everything went back into the farm.
You hadn't had your own money for a long time.
Sheer necessities whatever.
Yeah.
So, and that was wonderful. And then later came over one day and asked if I wanted a permanent job, because I thought it was just wonderful, a weekend of something to do. Orb was going to bowls at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what do I have to do? And they said, well, to start off with, you'll do 2 days helping in the kitchen and serving the meals and just the general dusting and the bathrooms. Another day, the second day was floors and something, And the third 2 days was cooking. So I said, well, that's out. And Orb said she's looked after a diabetic mother for years. She lived in a restaurant.
Yeah.
She can cook. He said, but she's not too good at this dusting business. So that night there was dust everywhere. But I was still not good at dusting.
Yeah. But who wants to be good at dusting? I mean,
and I went for a month's trial, and they never ever told me whether I passed or not, but I was there for 12 years.
So you must have at some point got over your...
Yeah, and I ended up as full-time cook. So that got me over from being a busy farmer's wife to being a retired lady, and I was ready for it, doing the bowls. It's your mum.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
In fact, we've got some photos from Bonnie Bransgrove. Did you play with her too?
Who?
Bonnie Bransgrove?
Bonnie didn't play for very long.
Oh.
Yeah, but her mother played.
Yeah. She had some photos of the bowls.
Yeah. Played with Angus's mother. She was
My grandmother, yeah.
yeah, she was in the team
Yeah.
with me. Yeah.
Well, I've got a photo of your mum and my grandmother. So you might even be in that photo. I'll have to check.
I've got many photos of you and Bub and all the others.
Yeah.
That help you with yeah.
Yes, yeah, we started it off, right from the beginning.
Good friendship.
I played tennis. We played tennis. Mrs. Barr had a tennis court on her property. We played there, and when all wanted had he joined the bowls, and he'd only join on the condition that I join with him.
Yeah.
So I thought, now they tell you it's a disease, I'll get him started and then I'll come back to tennis. But by that time, Annette had taken my place in the team and I would have put her out. So I stayed with bowls. Oh, and that was a business. And there was old Mrs. Mackay and Mrs. Bransgrove and Marble Sharples, and me. And I was the driver, so that was my team. And we used to go everywhere.
Yeah.
It was great. But I'd get the kids off to school, milk and get the kids off to school and rush up there. And in those days, the dresses were long and buttoned all the way up.
Yeah.
And I'd be driving the car and Mrs. Mackay would be doing buttons.
Is that the clubhouse for the bowling club came from Nayork, didn't it? The railway station.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was the good shed.
Yeah.
To start off with.
The good shed, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, but we've got...
I'm just interested, apart from the bowls and working obviously at the hospital, what other things did you get involved in?
Tennis. Yeah, we always played the tennis. And of course it was all the kids' things.
Yeah.
We used to go to go with the dancers rock. And my mother always taught me that if you go anywhere with anybody, you come home with them. And the kids used to be so disgusted. And the first boy that ever asked Annette out didn't have a car or anything. And Bob asked him, how were you going to bring her home in a wheelbarrow? It was...
Well, because it wasn't quite as lenient back in those days as was when my parents went, because you could just drive without a licence, it wouldn't matter. Like my dad used to take mum to the dances and he never had a licence. I mean, he was a mechanic, but he never had a licence.
That's terrible.
Says you, who drove from the age of 12.
Drove an ambulance without a licence.
Did you eventually have to go for your driver's licence?
I never went to my driver's licence until I got married and came over. And that was a funny thing. My father grew up in Swanbourne. The valley in Bendigo, they had the hotel there. It's at present under the dam big dam they built.
Oh, okay.
Gee, I should know that.
Bendigo, I think we know that, but I don't know it. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was a Victorian fellow. And I went for my licence, and the policeman when I said my maiden name, he asked, about me, and he ended up as a second cousin or something of mine. And he's all sitting out with the girls in the A model Ford, and it's stinking hot. And I'm in here talking to the policeman over for over an hour. And then he said, "Oh, I suppose, what did you come in for?" And I said, "My driver's licence." He said, "Oh, I suppose I better write it out."
So that was it. You're a bit like the people that come in and they say, Alf Summers used to say, "Well, yeah, you've been driving for 10 years, we better give you your licence." Yeah, so that's how it was.
Alf Summers was a wonderful policeman.
Yeah.
A good old type.
Yeah, I think nobody has a bad word about him. No. Not that they say me.
And his wife was lovely. She ate onions. She ate an onion a day and you knew it. Yeah, every day she'd have an onion. Yeah. And Elsie Gunston, I drove over to West Australia, and Elsie said, "You can come with me on the condition you don't."
That's fun.
Yes.
You talked about your parents or your father having the prospecting bug. Did you ever feel like you needed to get out there and dig for gold or dig a hole? Try to find, yeah? So you did?
He did at sandalwooding a lot. And sandalwooding is a tree that grows on the roots of other trees. And you pull it, and you get it up. And we used to rush in and see when you pulled it up, that was when sometimes you could find a nugget or two.
Oh.
We were going truly out in the bush.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise that there was black children and white children because I played with black for so long. And when I started school, I started in a convent school because it was around the corner. And I just went over to play with the black children, and the nuns growled at me. And I couldn't understand why I wasn't allowed to go and play with them. But I realise now that in those times the black children were, they were always in a little building by themselves. Oh. Yeah. So
isn't it terrible to be made, told who you can and can't be friends with? Yeah.
It didn't dawn on me that they were any different to me. So I've always been truly with the black people. Yeah. We learned a lot.
Yeah.
I used to come in the bush, we were out in the bush because it was of the sandalwooding, and Dad come in the nude, and Dad always had a box of trousers and old dresses, just as mocky sort of dresses. And when they were coming in, they'd always signal to Dad. I don't know, I never ever asked him how he knew they were coming, but we were never allowed outside to greet them until they got their dresses. But they were very quiet people.
But always welcome, as long as they put their pants on.
My mother had been a nurse, and so, a lot of children would come in that had been burnt or old or fire, and sick. And they got to know us.
Yeah. Someone different to play with.
Yeah. To me, they were my mates.
Yeah.
So
didn't see any difference,
Yeah.
So when you're at the convent school, were the Aboriginal kids allowed to attend the classes with you, or were they?
No, they had separate classes.
Separate places.
Yeah.
Okay.
They had no Catholic people, so nearly all volunteers.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because they were only there. They'd go walk about. The kids never learnt strict rules like, like they just ate when they were hungry and they hated clothes.
Yeah.
Never wore shoes and socks and things. So my mother was always very particular about our feet, and we always had shoes. And of course, when we started school first, we had shoes, and nearly all the kids didn't have shoes because there was a terrible lot of sustenance workers where I grew up, and they lived in tents and worked on the roads, and the kids would walk to school. They'd have no shoes. So my mother used to say, I don't know why they can't have shoes because they last a long time, but she didn't know that we would get around the other side of the hedge, take the shoes off and go to school with them.
You want to be like everybody else.
We didn't want to be the only kids who wore shoes. Yes. Yeah, that was one memory I've always had of hiding the shoes. So, yeah, so we'd have to get under the tap and wash our feet before we could.
So she didn't know.
Back on again. I can't recall her actually wearing socks so much, but always made us wear shoes.
Well, if she had nursing history, she probably saw some horrendous injuries to people's feet. Yeah, so she just didn't want that to happen to you.
Both my sister and I, we would have followed the nursing trade, I think, but Mum was so against it.
Yeah.
She'd seen some terrible things at the end of the war.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So,
Didn't want you going through that.
But my daughter was the one who took up nursing. Yeah, yes. Funny, isn't it?
Well, it comes around, doesn't it? I mean, you sort of followed your mother's lead
Yeah.
to a degree with taking in the children. And
But my mother played tennis and swam a lot, so, she had that knowledge that we wanted to do it. So, yeah, we did it. We used to ride, my brother and I, 22 miles on a corrugated gravel road to Manjimup on our foot and our push bikes to train for swimming.
did you?
But 9 times out of 10, someone, an old ute or a truck or something would pull up,
Come
take
on.
the bikes up the back, and you just hopped in and had a ride. So,
It's a pretty good effort on a push bike, though. Yeah, to ride.
yeah, but it was part of the training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it most probably got us out of washing up dishes or something. Yeah. Yeah, no.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your life here, or things that you've seen that you've liked in the district, or that you don't like, or?
I think this is one of the most wonderful places ever. The farming life was fantastic. The Italian neighbours were absolutely marvellous. The school was great. Once a week there was pasty day, and you took your turns in doing the pasties and taking them on Friday to the school, and the people were wonderful. Then when we left the farm and came down to Neerim South, it was exactly the same. Everyone was wonderful, And when when I first started at the hospital, we had babies or, mothers coming.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was wonderful, and you got to know them and their families and everything. But it's been fantastic. And there's always somebody that'll help you.
Yeah.
There was always somebody that would help some things. If you hay, you originally you hired someone to come and do your hay, and if it looked like it was getting wet, you'd find everybody would come and help you get it into the sheds and everything. It's always been, always, right from the beginning, it's been a wonderful life. Seen a lot. What do you think? Mm-hmm. I suppose today it is, in a way, better, but the old days were slower and more companionable. It was safer. We never even had a key to the front door, and it was. I have had a wonderful life all the years on the farm and everything, and I've seen the children grow, and they're all settled now in good homes or nice things. And I've been very lucky. I've got my little house with a little paddock on each side, and I'm quite happy there with my garden, the roses that jump out and scratch me, and all sorts of things. No, I wouldn't live anywhere else. No,
That's wonderful.
It was wonderful.
I really appreciate you coming and talking to us. It's been a treat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely treat. Yeah, it's been terrific to hear your story and to hear of your adventures here, not just here, but over in Western Australia as well. I mean, to have somebody that's lived through the war years is quite extraordinary these days. When's your birthday?
27th of May, 1925.
So another 12, and not less than 12 months, you're 100. Oh my goodness.
That's what they tell me.
Big celebrations. You have to open up the champagne then.
When I was 90, they gave me a party. Did you go?
I can't remember.
It
Was it up at
the Junction
Mall? Yeah, that's right.
I knew nothing about it. I think everybody in the district went. They had hired the band.
Wow.
Everything for me, and I was getting really worried because if a couple of ladies were together talking and I walked up, they'd stop.
You wonder what you've done wrong.
And then one dear friend was coming towards me, and she just looked at me and shot off across the road. And I thought, what's the matter with her? The car's over here, why is she?
So you had no idea?
I had no idea. They had it all planned so well. We were to go down to Nuji to celebrate my birthday, and a friend her birthday was the same day, and it was all planned, And we're driving up there. My youngest daughter was with me, with us. And we were driving there, and they said, "Oh, we got to call into the Juncture Hall for something."
Yeah.
And when we went there, I said, "Oh, we can't, because there's all cars there.
Something
There must be
going
a
on."
wedding or something on." Yeah. They said, "Oh, no, we just want to leave a parcel here or go and see Charlie Brown's
Yeah.
road, you know." And of course, they drove in there, and I said, "You can't park in front of the hall." Somebody. But then they started coming out of the hall, and I said, "Oh my goodness, we've got to get out of here." They must probably think of it. And then my daughters, the three of them, stood on the step up there.
Started recognising people.
I thought, "Oh my God." And, you know, they kept saying to me, you know, Dorothy kept saying to me, "Mum, can't you put a prettier shirt on or something?" I said, "What, to go down to the new gym?" I said, "If you dress up to go down there, you get thrown out." Oh dear.
Wonder what they'll do on your 100.
This is what I'm
Expect the unexpected.
And then when I was 95, Angus came around, 7:30 in the morning. I'm still in the nightie and dressing gown. And he said, "I've got something to show you." And I said, "Oh, what?" And he said, "Oh, it's your birthday." He said, "Oh, your daughter's been in touch with me." And I thought, what on earth is this, you know?
7:30.
And his car was parked in the gateway, and I thought, he said, "Are you all right to come out?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I thought, I bet Dorothy's bought me a dog, because it's the first time in my life I've ever been without a dog.
Oh.
And I thought, oh, this is what Angus has got it tied up at the gate down there. And I go down there, and here he has put up this great big sign, "Toot, she's 95. Oh, I rang my neighbour and I said, "If there's a lot of noise," she said, "It's all right, Dorothy's rang me."
That's what they all knew.
And they heard it right here from there. The trucks were doing that too.
That's gorgeous.
And then the paper arrived, and Angus, I think, was the one that said to me, "You better go and get dressed." So I did. I got dressed, but I hadn't done my hair, hadn't anything. And then the television arrived from down Gippsland. I didn't see that because I wouldn't get that well much later.
Oh, so they did a
Dorothy had
film for it.
arranged everything. She'd
Oh,
run
wow.
everybody she knew in Neerim South and warned them. So,
That's great.
and Judy Gleeson, she's in charge of the food relief,
Yeah.
and of course she's running up and down. I saw her car about 3 times, making a heck of a
Oh,
noise.
that's great.
So this is the town I live in. You see,
Yes.
old town came to that.
Make everything special.
Yeah.
Well, I can't imagine what they'll do for the 100.
100, that'll be big.
Well, they tell me they've been planning it for the last 2 years.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll wait and see then.
Watch out.
So, no, I tell them I'm going to disappear.
Okay, go to Queensland or something. Yeah.
Yes. No, I have a wonderful family, three girls.
Yeah.
Very different, each one, same mixture, that's very different. Yeah.
Well, it'd be boring if everyone was the same, wouldn't it? It'd be boring if everyone was the same.
And the boys, Peter, especially Peter, he's been wonderful to me.
Yeah.
He married a little girl, she's a Singaporean.
Yeah.
She's half Chinese and half Indian. She's the most lovely little girl, but when she talks, she rattles off so fast and so quickly. Slow down.
Did you get to go over to see her, meet her family? And
Yes, we had 5 days in Singapore with her
wonderful.
family and living. We had, prior to that, we had a week in Singapore, but being as a tourist and being with the families is completely different. Yeah.
we love Singapore.
I've done a lot of travelling.
Yeah. Where have you been? Where's your favourite place?
Well, Orb came home one day, just not 12 months after we left the farm, and he put these things on the table, and I said, "What are they?" And he said, "Have a look at them." And I said, "Oh, what are they for?" I thought they were brochures, and they were tickets to go to Europe. Because and when we did that tour, we met an American couple, and we were going to go back the next year, but that Chernobyl, blew up.
Yeah.
And they weren't total people. And America was absolutely taking advantage of the fact that the English people weren't travelling to Europe and they were travelling to there, so very cheap tea. So we went to America and we met up with these people that we had met on the tour.
Yeah.
We hadn't purposely met, got friendly with them on the tour, but we just seemed always to, because we were a pair and they were a pair, we
Gravitate to each other.
yeah, we got sort of put on the one table and everything.
Yeah.
So we went there and that was wonderful. I've done 9 trips to America to see them. They're wonderful.
Wow.
And then I joined Jolly Walkers here, and I heard Jance and James talking to Wendy Richards about a trip they were doing to the Himalayas. I said, "Oh, go to Nepal, that was a dream come true. And I said, "I'd love to do that." And Jance and James said to me, "Well, why don't you?" And I said, "Oh, well, I don't think Auckland, I don't know." Then we went away in the caravan for 3 months, and when I came back, she said, "You owe me a certain amount of money. I've booked you to go to Nepal and Auckland." So I went to Nepal when I was 81, and we did the 24-day tour of the Nepal. And it was funny, Jans and James told the papers about us going, and I was reading the papers, and this 81-year-old person, and I thought, silly old thing, she'll hold everybody up.
Not you.
I thought, oh, I'm 81. So that started off, and then we came back, and Sing Australia started in Warragul, and Wendy and I joined that. And Wendy said, do you want to come to Turkey? And I said, "What for?" And she said, "Oh, Anzac Day to sing at the dawn service." And everything. I said, "Oh, that'd be wonderful." And all right, she went away, and she went home, and she thought, "I wonder if Irene meant that you wanted to go." And I'm there thinking, I wonder if Wendy was asking. So we went, and we roomed together, and she has been a fantastic friend to me ever since. Yeah.
That would have been quite an emotional experience to sing there.
Oh, the dawn service, it was out of this world, because that was where my father got injured. He got sent home from that, yes. that was where his illness started. He was, the boat was sunk and he was in the water for what we thought before he was rescued. And one thing another. So, yeah, so Wendy and I went and we sang the dawn service. I sing as flat as a tap, but
Enough people around you, nobody knows. Yeah.
That's the best thing about a choir.
yes, and then we went to the Lone Hill service, and that is only the public. It was only sort of almost a private thing, and that is where I think was much more emotional when they come to dawn service. But to go there when the sun's coming up and everything, and this great peak at the top where they just shot the it's, and all the cemeteries and everything, it's really beautiful. It has to be, it's so.
What a place. Yeah. And Anzac Cove, Low Pine. You just can't imagine how they even thought about tackling that location to land.
And then the other big cemetery in France, I've been to that too, where all those names are and everything.
Also young, the ages.
Yeah.
You've travelled a lot all through them. You travelled a lot.
Yes. We used to go, I didn't know what winter Neerim South was because we used to go in the caravan all the time. So you're having my family in Western Australia and then my children in Queensland, and they just really
Perfect.
had all the excuses in the sun.
And caravanning is such a fabulous time.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we used to do 2 hours on and 2 hours off for driving.
Yeah.
And that was good,
Yeah.
You two shared everything, didn't you? You shared
Yes,
the
we
workload,
did.
you shared the driving.
Had a wonderful marriage. Yeah. So that bloke that used to hang over the piano.
I know.
That's a great story, isn't it? It's a love story. It's beautiful.
Yes. We're very grateful for Margaret for having doubled up.
Yeah.
Chosen the Yank.
Taken the Yankee. I bet she, well, she might have been sorry about her choice in the end.
She did get married, but she married in England, but I sort of lost track with her, so, yes, and
That's great.
it was good.
Alright, well, I think we've got some great stuff there. I really appreciate you coming
Sorry,
in.
I chalked my head off.
Well, that's what we wanted you to do, so you did it perfectly.
Absolutely excellent.
Absolutely, because we've done a lot of interviews, and especially Janine and Bob have been at all of them, and I found that one of the most interesting ones that we've done. Actually, it's a great story.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. I've had a great life in her. It's never had any money. You know, when we came to the farm, we were appalled, or all was appalled at the fact that the paddocks were just so rough and everything. And Mr. Teasdale had the grocery shop up the junction, and he came down and he said, "Oh, do you want to come and have a ride with me?" And he took us out of Lockett's place. And here's Lockett's, you know, with not a weed in the paddocks, perfect. Yeah. And Mr. Teasdale said to her, "This is what you could make your country into." And a fortnight after, the truck came down and it had 2 bags of grass seed, 3 bags of super, and something else, I forget now. And they delivered it to us, and all went up to Teasdale, and he said, "I can't pay for it," he said. "I can't take it." And he said, "You can't afford to leave here either." So we
What kindness.
had no money to pay for it. So if it wasn't for him, And then we did the 4 acres near the house with that, and we had grass and level. I think starting off hard like that, it makes you appreciate everything. So.
But also appreciate everything too, because, you know, the generosity of Mr. Teasdale and to be able to make it work after that too. I mean, you did the hard work yourself. You didn't. Nobody gave it to you.
But we would never. Well, I suppose we would have, because we were stuck there, you know.
Yeah.
As he said, you can't afford to leave.
No.
And that's good.
And you must have started from scratch, like even dairying, like difficult when you had no experience.
Yeah. And we brought these poor old Jersey cows down with us, and they went down to the bottom of the creek and stayed there.
So
We couldn't get them out. Couldn't get them out of it. And the place had a beautiful old retired racing horse and 2 old big old working horses.
Yeah.
And we put them in a paddock next to the railway line. And so on the 3rd day they were there, they came running down to the gate to Orb, and Orb thought, you know, why, you know, what's the matter with them? So he opened the gate and they went straight to the water trough. See, when you got irrigation, you got channels everywhere for the cattle to eat. And it wasn't, we just put them in that paddock. And Orb said, gee, there's no water there, those poor horses. But luckily it had rained. When we came down here, I think it either rained or drizzled or something for 32 days. And 32 days I had 2 little girls in nappies and everything.
Oh, how did you manage the nappies?
And the toilet was, I don't know, halfway between the house and the cow shed.
But you made good.
You had to dig your own hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a life, wasn't it? But you know, you made it into a beautiful property, and
It taught us a lot.
yeah,
Yes, you know, it taught us to you had to make do with everything. I don't think we would have survived without rabbits.
yeah.
I could tell you 200 different ways to cook them. We used to have to go around the traps every night,
Yeah.
you know. And the first time I ever did it, I got a big one out and he got away from me.
Oh,
I said to her, well, I can't kill this damn thing, you know. Put your foot on it. So, yeah. First time I did that, it was only a young rabbit and I pulled their hair off.
the first. Well, you know, you live and you learn, don't you?
Oh, that
Well,
was
you were never going to cook the head anyway, so
yeah. And chooks, you know, chook, if you killed a chook for your birthday, it was wonderful, you know, right from the time that you put the string on and stretched the neck over and chopped them. The head up, plucked it and cleaned it and everything. It was the most wonderful birthday present you ever had, and you got the parson's nose.
special for some. This one still loves the parson's nose.
Yeah, it's good.
That's part of the chook. But
Yeah.
Oh, no, this has been great.
Anyway,
it has been.
No, it made me cry.
Yeah.
yeah, when I've got neighbours and they've bought chooks and they got this glorious rooster who's the most beautiful bird. But when they pulled up, he used to attack them. You know, he'd really fly at them. They asked me, how do you tame a rooster? I said, oh, it's easy. You get 2 pieces of string, you put one around the neck, one around the feet, you get a block of wood and an axe and I thought I was so barbaric that it would talk to me for about 3 weeks. I think I scared the life out of them.
I thought you were going to say you use it for crayfish bait.
That was awful. We found a very hard, from my brother, very hard dollop of cow manure, and he cut it into oil. We pulled it down to this house and went straight through the front door. So that was another 6 weeks of cleaning.
Tara.
I love it.
I never got a belt in my life. My mother had
No.
all sorts of different ways to teach us a lesson.
Yeah. I'm sure she would have had all the chores.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that was what we got.
Yeah.